Good morning, traders and investors around the world, and welcome to Monday's edition of premarketinfo.com, where we prepare you for the most important hour of the day, the first hour. Good morning, Dennis. Looks like we got a little bit of a sell-off going on this morning in the S&Ps, trading down 8.5 points.
Little pullback in the S&Ps. Obviously, Europe here having a little bit of impact. You're seeing a lot of these European financials trading down 3 or 4% this morning. I think that's putting a little bit of pressure on the U.S. markets.
Okay, recapping the overnight activity, we made a high right off the hop at 1314.50. If that holds as the high of the day, we have a downside target under 1300 at 1298.70. So far, that Globex low, Dennis, perilously above the weekly low, 1301.50. Missed it by a half a point. We've bounced off that, but not a very big bounce, only holding up 2 points above that. If that holds as the low of the day, which seems unlikely, we have an upside target of 1317.75. In order to get this thing turned around, Dennis, get back headed north, we got to get above the 1307 level, which was Friday's low. Moving on to the Big Ten, starting with ExxonMobil. If I would have talked to you a little bit earlier, I could have said there was a double bottom there at 85.87 to 81 from Thursday and Friday. We are currently trading below that level. So expect resistance moving down from the 86.5 level to the, which would be just above Friday's close and the lows. Coming back on the downside, Dennis, looks like we could be revisiting that $84 level, which was lows back in mid-January.
Yeah, I see those couple lows that you're looking at. I like that $85 number. I remember this one when we were coming up here on this run way back in late December. We ran back up here. We kind of hung out at 85, and it seemed like a magnet. We were trading above it, below it. We, 5 times here, and then we got above it. We came back, retested it right here. It held. We eventually cut through and made those couple lows that you were talking about, Joel. But even on those days that we were making those couple lows, there was a couple highs near that 85 too. So that 85 is just a little magical number in this XOM. And as we come down here to retest, I gotta think we may bounce here once. It's 85.41 right now, so it's trading 40 cents above that 85. But keep an eye on that 85 number too.
Okay, Apple continues to confound short sellers here. Some kind of breathing room after that gap up. Not really finding any. Have a couple good numbers for you. You have Thursday and Friday's high here right at the 448.79 level and just below that. So let's keep an eye on that for resistance. Above that, not much. And coming back on the downside, Dennis, when and if this thing takes out 443, I think we're in for a pretty good ride south.
Yeah, three times down there here now. 3 days in a row, this 443, 444 area has been the low. So you got to think if we start pulling back there, eventually we might take it out. We always say there's no such thing as a triple or as a quadruple bottom, anyways. So usually I say there's no such thing as a triple bottom. Well, there kind of is in this case, but fourth time here, maybe eventually it takes us out. I'd still play from the long side until it can start trading that 443, 442 area, and then you would talk about that gap. So it starts to open up if you start getting below 442.
Okay, moving on to IBM and Dennis. I don't think I've ever seen this formation before in a stock. You have 9 consecutive. Well, didn't do it on Friday. I was going to say 9 consecutive higher lows, but that streak was broken on Friday. You're looking at major support here at the 189.50 level. We had Wednesdays and Fridays low right around there. Coming back on the upside, you will find some resistance at the close at 190.46. Major resistance probably forming in Friday's high, 191.70 to that 192 level.
I'm going to limit my comments too, Joel, because I actually have a trading position in IBM.
Okay, moving on to Chevron Corporation, the recipient of some poor earnings news on Friday. Nice gap down in this, Dennis, from 104.67 up to 106.35. It sure looks like it's going to have a hard time filling that gap today as we're trading down 48 cents. Friday's low is really the only number I have to focus on the downside here, 103.12. Below that level, we should be looking at 101.78, which was the low on December 20th.
Yeah, if this thing starts to get below that 103.12 area, Joel, it opens up for sure. So starts trading 103. There's always a psychological whole number theory that I always go through. So call it 103. Gets below that, then you start to think about 101, that 100 area that we were at mid-December could come into play too. If we rally up here, 105. Was a little bit of support there. Even back, if we go back into mid-December back here, we had a couple days where it bottomed out at 105. It bottomed out there a few days ago at a 105 area. Now it's obviously cut through there. So if we were to rally back, maybe find a little resistance in that 105 area.
Okay, moving on to Microsoft, still digesting that parabolic move it's had from the mid 24s up to almost the $30 level. Really a wall of resistance starting to form under 30 now, starting at 29.53, which was Friday's high, and right there with Thursday's close. Got a couple lows here, Dennis, above 29, 29.07 being the lowest of them. Currently trading a nickel above that level. Use the close as minor resistance. I think if you're really going to want to be a patient short seller, you might have to wait for this 29.5 level. Coming back on the downside below this 29.07, Dennis will tell you there's a little psychological support at 29, but there's not. It's really, it's really at 28.75, which was the low on the day they gapped up when they announced earnings.
I love it when Joel puts the numbers in my mouth. Anyways, I agree with your 29.5 number, Joel. 29.45 was the open on Friday. It got as high as 29.53. 29.50's kind of been a magnet here. If it gets back up to that area, I think it would be a decent shot to try a short on it. Had an upgrade today, just from I'm not even sure, it was a smaller brokerage house, so I don't know how much influence that's going to have. But if it can get into rally mode, look at that 29.5 area as a good shorting area.
What do you, find out that brokerage house, because I would like to short it. I mean, they just had a 5-point run and they're upgraded.
I think it's a little Mickey Mouse one. Because when I was looking through the upgrades and downgrades, I was like, I don't even know if I'd heard of them. So, so I didn't put much into that upgrade.
Okay, GE here, range bound, Dennis. Keeps flirting with that 1925, 1927 level. Just gets beat down like a redheaded stepchild. Closes at 1903, so we're still closing above that 19 level. We've had 3 closes here from 1903 to 1913. So once again, since we're trading below that level, stiff resistance here from 19 up to the close, 1903. Coming back on the downside, not putting a lot on Friday's low here since we're already trading below that level. But you have Tuesdays and Wednesdays low at 1875 here, and major support at 18.5.
This is an interesting chart. It's obviously we've had a lot of consolidation. We had such a run up here from late November when we were down at 14.5, just moving, and now just rounding. It's like it's definitely having some rest in here, trying to figure out which way it wants to go. 1920 to 1927 is just huge. It's these tops up here. There's been size up there. There's been high frequency resistance all over the place up there. So until it can break above that 1927, 1930 area, you'll continue to see some high frequency sellers up there. If we were to break below 1850, I would start to get bearish. So that would be the number on the downside, where I think is if it broke down below that 1850 area, which was a low from mid-January there, then I think you might want to get bearish. Until then, it's still range bound, Joel.
Okay, Procter and Gamble here, Dennis. That's a pretty big pre-market move here, being down 53 cents here at 63.77. This stock, after running into a brick wall here at 67, has really started to pull back. We're trading right on Friday's low here at 63.66. That area should be critical support. If in fact we break that, we could be easily going to the $63 level. Coming back on the upside here, since we are trading substantially, that 64.30 area, probably all the way down to 64 should be good
All the
resistance.
brokerage houses are ganging up on this thing now. It's this move money out of defensive names and into the more aggressive names. And Procter Gamble getting a couple of downgrades today. BMO Capital downgrading and UBS downgrading Procter Gamble. So that's why it's trading down 60 cents. Seems like everybody's just jumping on the momentum of the get out of the defensive names, get out of. I was even hearing somebody on CNBC, one of the analysts were on there this morning, saying the same thing, that you got to get into more riskier assets now, and they're going to start to see money continue to move out of these defensive names. This is a trade that's been happening for the last month and a half, really. Is the defensive names have been relatively weaker, and you're seeing some of the sectors that were very poor performers in the last year, like your financial sector, actually starting to get stronger. So I think the trade continues, but at a certain point in time, valuation comes into play in stocks like this, Joel. Like Procter Gamble, is a stable company, conservative. I don't see it going, 61. You can look back down here in November, maybe eventually it could go down there and test that, but that would be a huge move for it too. I continue to play the whole number theory in this. If it cuts through, 63 might give it some support now, because a lot of institutions just say buy a block at 63. No one knows company is a decent company. So that's how I would continue to play it. If we do break below Friday's low there, then maybe you think about that 63 number.
Okay, another stock here that's just been selling off. Another defensive stock, AT&T. It's continued its decline. Closed right on the low of the week Friday, 29.15 low with a 16 close. That will be resistance now. Looks poised here to test the December 21st low of 29.03. Below that, we're looking at 28.51. Coming back on the upside, I'm sure there's going to be resistance here at the 29.15, 16 level. But if there is an ensuing rally in the overall market, I think it can get a little bit higher than that. I think your patient shorts might wait for this thing to get over 29.40. 45 was Thursday's close, and 29.53 was Friday's high.
Yeah, I think you've given some real good numbers there, Joel. This is 29.5. We talked about this number where we bottomed out in mid-January. On the earnings report, it traded right, I think it was the earnings, that knocked it down. It traded right to that 29.5 area. Hung out there for a day or two, and obviously then broke down there on Friday. So if it was to get back up to 29.5, you got to think there'd be a few sellers up there. Use the whole number theory again on this one. On these defensive names, this whole number theory, I really think has some relevance. $29 would be the first level. Takes that out. Joel's looking at this mid-December low at 28.50. I would agree with that. If it takes out that 29 with a little bit of selling pressure, that 28.50 could eventually come into play.
It could take a couple of weeks, but it could get
It
to
moves
20.
slow. But AT&T's been moving a little faster the last few days. So typically, though, AT&T will find its range and then trade in it for probably a month.
And also with all these stocks and in general, they'll go up, they'll go up, they'll go up, go up, they'll hit resistance, they'll trade there, they'll consolidate, and then boom, finally when people want to start to sell it on weakness, that's when you start getting pretty good moves on the downside. Moving on to another defensive stock that has really held up very well, J&J. Double top 65, 87 to 88 with a wall forming at that $66 level. Interestingly, we are trading below Friday's low here, so getting a little gap down. So use that 65.46 Friday's low up to the close of 65.56 as resistance. Coming back on the downside, I'm actually going to go with Dennis's whole number theory here with 65. The reason I'm doing that is we just had a multiple of closes over the last 2 weeks right in that $65 area. So until we can get 3 closes above 66, I'm not looking north, and 3 closes below 65, and then maybe J&J will really start to give it up.
been a name that's held up well. You're right, Joel. With the other defensive names holding up, this is actually relatively close to its 3-month high here. The 66 number though is huge. It remains huge. Again on Friday, I think the high was what 65.87 on Friday, Joel, if I'm right.
87.88.
Yeah, 87
Yeah,
and 88 from the last 2 days. Why does it keep topping out there? You can have everybody. The reason it keeps topping out there is there's all kinds of high frequency resistance in front of this 66 number. 66 numbers had some size there. They love leaning on that size, those high frequency guys, and the lower and some of your swing traders are even selling it there too. So this thing gets in the 65.80s and 65.90s, and there's sellers all over the place. When it takes out the 66, then that trade will end. So you've got to just play it from the short side until that 66 gets taken out.
Okay, moving on to our last component in the Big Ten. Pfizer Corporation has repelled off the $22 level. In fact, last week's high was $21.99. Closed right near the low of the week. We've had 4 consecutive lows here, 21.45 to 21.52 with a 48 close. Trading a little bit below that level, but let's use that as resistance. All the way up to Friday's high at 21.60. Coming back on the downside, I see that January 5th low at 21.39. That has some significance, but looks like Pfizer could be heading down to the $21 level.
Joe, we've been talking about this one being ready to break down here for the last week and a half. It's just slowly drifting down. It's so slow, though. That's why I can't stand trading stocks that trade this quiet and this slow. Eventually here, I think it is still going to break down. It's another name that's held up fairly well considering how much money has come out of the defensive sector in the last couple of weeks. But I think eventually it breaks down, so I think rally's still to be sold.
Okay, S&P's just hanging here, Dennis, hanging above the Globex low 1302 as well as the weekly low at 1301.50, trying to protect that magical $1,300 level. So interesting to see what happens early in the session. Really not moving at all, Dennis, which is kind of strange for the S&Ps. We will take a quick break and we'll be back with our market movers.